This is James Lupton, delighted to be joined with Stitch Duran. Stitch, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. It's good to be back from the UK. It's nice and sunny here. It was cold and wet in Sheffield, so it's nice to be back home.
I bet it's still cold and wet over this way. So yeah, you're in a better place than us.
Yeah, for sure.
Fantastic. As you know, today we're going to take you for a journey through your career, 8 rounds. So round one, let's go back to the start. And I want to talk about your starting into combat sports, introduction into Muay Thai, into kickboxing, or via the military.
Yeah, I walked in into a recruiter, and April the 13th, 1972, I joined the Air Force. And my dream was always, say, if I went to the Orient, I'd want to study the martial arts. And of course, they sent me to Thailand in 1974. Saw my first Muay Thai fight, and from there, I started training on base with the Koreans, Taekwondo. Then they left, and the Thais took over the program and kind of gave us a lot of the Muay Thai system, along with Taekwondo, because that was still under contract. And with that, I developed ASK, the American School of Kickboxing, and put everything together. So that was the start of my whole career.
What was that experience like out in Thailand? Because I know they're massive on their combat sports over there.
Yeah, it was entirely different. It was a unexpected lifestyle for sure. To get there early in the morning and to see the jungles and the humidity and where our base was right on the ocean. So yeah, the people were great. And it was a crazy experience for me to just get there and think, wow, what am I doing here? But I love Thailand. It'd be nice to go back. I've been to, like I say, I left in the April of '75 and haven't been back since. But in fact, I had Thai food last night, so it's hard to get it out of my system.
Absolutely. Let's move on to round two in that case then. And that is, I always believe in life to follow your dreams. You did that by moving to Vegas. So let's fast forward a little bit to Vegas. Talk to me about getting the call to relocate.
Yeah, I tell you, that took a lot of heart and soul and a lot of craziness and a lot of support from my family. I tell you, I had a great job with R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company. The company that made the Winstons, the Salems, the Camels, and had a nice car. Every 3 years, I got a brand new car, and worked by myself, 8 to 5, and had my own school of kickboxing. And but my dream was to move to Las Vegas, and so I put in for a job transfer, and lo and behold, I get a call that there's an opening here in Las Vegas, and no overnight driving, and everything was in town, but I had to be there in a week, and a little too tough to be in a week. So I talked to the manager, Augie Ponce here, and he gave me 2 weeks. And James, in 2 weeks, I transferred my school to a student. I sold my house. I took a big dump of a lot of money. Uh, Put my family in U-Haul and drove 9 hours to Las Vegas. And with the new job, I took a secondary position. So I took like a $25,000 year cut in pay. So yeah, follow your dreams, but you can't do them unless you have the support of your family. And they sacrificed a lot for me. And here I am talking to you now. So with that, we've all been blessed.
It's easy to look back now in hindsight and say, yeah, it worked out well. Talk to me about the gamble, the risk you took, and I'm assuming it wasn't an easy decision to make.
No, economically it was hard. It was, to, take a major pay cut from R.J. Reynolds to get a secondary position to follow my dreams was extremely hard. And I remember my brother Michael lived there, and not far from where I got my place. And him and his wife came to visit us, and my wife, you just see the stress in our faces. And first he thought we got in a fight, and he asked what happened, and told him I couldn't pay the rent. And I was in that position. And he wrote me out a check. I paid the rent, and paid him back double, and I haven't looked back. And that was that hard obstacle, the physical, the financial obstacle that I had to cross, to get to the other side. And with the help of my family, I did it. And, I'm forever grateful to him.
Does that say a lot about your character to take the risk and take the gamble for this dream?
Well, I look back now, and Yeah, and I think, wow, it was a little on the crazy side, right? But it's funny you bring this up, James, because yesterday the last of the elders from my little town passed away, and I talked to her son this morning, and he really kind of put it in a context that I've never heard, because the only one that had a college education was my brother Benny, but there was eight of us, but we all became successful. But he says you guys went through your own college of education, and that was, I guess, the bumps and bruises of going there, but our work ethic, giving back, being fair. I think those are the obstacles that we use as a positive to get where we're at now. But that's a good question. And when David made that comment about us having our own, colleges that we had to attend, those were the colleges. The bumps and bruises and the highlights and lowlights of life. So been there and done that.
Absolutely. You mentioned one of your siblings. You're one of eight, five boys. When you was growing up, did you and your brothers, play fight, scrap? Was you into your combat sports before the military?
Well, we've always been in not combat sport. Me and my brother Michael, that was years above me, fought all the time. I'm talking about fighting. And I remember at one time, I would always, he was a year bigger than or older than me, but I was a lot quicker, a lot smaller. So I would pump, and then run and beat the crap out of him. And one day my parents are gone and I'm in the restroom and I'm combing my hair and he was right in the front of the door, man, and he wouldn't let me out and he hit me right here and cut me and busted my lip. And that was the last time we ever fought, so I learned my lesson from him. But we were all athletes. We all played the sports that were in high school: football, baseball, basketball. My brother Ernie ran track, and so in that aspect, we were athletes. It just and that helped us get where we're at.
Was you guys competitive with each other as well?
Well, I don't know if we were competitive with each other. I don't think so. I think we were competitive. All of us were competitive with what we did, but not against each other. That's a good question. Nobody's ever asked that. And, I kind of look and I said, no, we always supported each other. And even to this day, the interview I did one with David Diamante when I was in Sheffield, and my family saw it and they're responding back that, great interview. And, yeah, we all followed the same course of success.
Absolutely, and it's nice to hear that it's obviously more encouraging than competitive between all of you in your own sports.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, even now they're giving me all these nice accolades, and that's what it was all about. But all that was just a throwback from my parents. They were hardworking people, and economically we didn't have the economics, but we always had fresh fruit and vegetables because we picked them. And so we always ate comfortable. I remember for the cows and the pigs and the goats and my father and my uncle would kill them and slaughter them, and that was our meat. So we ate comfortable. We supported each other even to this day.
Fantastic. Let's move on to round three. You were coaching in sports, and obviously you're well known now for being the cutman. Why, or how did your path take the cutman route? And did you ever want to be a cutman before you became a cutman?
No, I didn't even know what a cut man was when I started working in sports, right? Uh, but that was part of when I had my own school of kickboxing. I was a trainer first and foremost. I was always a trainer, and a lot of people don't realize that. They thought that I was just a cut man, but I was doing pads for a lot of amateur boxers, and that's why I got into boxing to kind of improve myself. And but I was working with amateur fighters, and when I had my school of kickboxing, I had some great fighters and pros and amateurs, and I trained them all. And so when I moved to Las Vegas, I didn't go there to be a trainer because I thought all the top trainers in the world were there. But when I saw what they were doing, I said, "What? I could do the same." So being that I had still an 8 to 5 job, I couldn't be 100% trainer. But I went there to be a cut man because I thought all the great trainers in the world were there. But yeah, I learned to be a cut man, and I definitely didn't think it would bring me to this level of where I'm at now and make a difference. I remember referee Steve Mazzagatti once said, this is like 15 years ago when I was with the UFC. He says, Stitch, he goes, "You revolutionized being a cut man." and I take a lot of pride in that.
I mean, I certainly believe it is your destiny to be a cutman. Um, did you, or how soon on, or how early on did you realize that being a cutman was such a important role and holds a lot of responsibility within the sport?
Well, and all that was when I had a school of kickboxing, because fighters would get cut, and I knew that you could take them to that next level or give them that one more round. But let me add also, I saw Jamie Sheldon in Sheffield. We worked and fought against each other, but I was so proud to see how he has grown from a young cut man to where now he's one of the top cut men in Europe. So yeah, at that point I really when I was growing up, I realized how important a cut man was and the things that I could do to change the fighters' careers.
You said that you was obviously told by the referee that you revolutionised the role. You mentioned there Jamie Sheldon, and he's sort of grown through the sport into one of the leading cutmen in Europe. Do you feel like you're a bit of a pioneer in your role? Do you feel like you're a role model? Because I believe a lot of people look up to you who go in to be a cutman.
Yeah, of course. I get into the dressing rooms in the arena in Sheffield, and this actually it's breakfast before I get to the arenas. I'm walking into the restaurant at the hotel for breakfast, and this one guy, Jonas, comes up to me and wants to take a picture with me. And as we're taking the picture, he says, I learned being a cut man from watching your videos, and I'm a big, big fan of yours. So that was a nice feeling to get those type of accolades. And Jamie just put something out on social media that was, it's a pleasure working with him together and all that. So yeah, I think I've made a difference in the game and as a cut man, but then also, I've made a difference in changing a lot of fighters' careers through the performance of other guys that use the same style of work that I do. So it's a good, great, great feeling.
I want to ask you, is it intentional that you are so supportive and so helpful with other guys? Because of the first time that you would ask somebody for help as a cutman, I think at a Morris Fraser fight, and the
Yeah.
response you got from that person, I'll let you tell
Yeah.
that story.
Tell me what the response was.
Fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah. He says, fuck you. I'm taking this to my grave and you got to learn like me 100%. That was just, it just confirmed. Because keep in mind, growing up, my family always gave. My parents always gave, that was our nature. Right. And then, to get into Thailand and do that, I learned that system. But when he told me that, I figured, what, as a martial artist, our job is to give and teach anyway. So those were two positives on my side. And when he told me that, that just reinforced me that I didn't want to be like this guy. And I've done this interview hundreds of times. James, I've never once mentioned his name, and I know he doesn't know. He forgot about it because to him it was unimportant. I was just a nobody, right? But now I go back to Oakland with Andre Ward, that's the undefeated the champion of the world, and now I'm in movies, and people recognize me more. And I know he forgot about it, but I never did. Him and his son now wanted to take a picture with me, and of course I put my arm around both of them. And to me, that was a point of satisfaction. It's like raising your hands up in victory. And yeah, so he doesn't, to this point, doesn't even know I'm talking about him.
At that point, so you're just starting out, you're trying to learn the trade of being a cutman, and the first person you ask for help turns around and his response is "fuck you." How hard, or was it easy to just carry on and still continue to pursue this, or did you think, oh, maybe I should just not bother?
No, not at all. That was a motivation for me to do what I do because I was already good. I was good as a trainer. I was recognized as the top trainer in kickboxing. I was good at wrapping hands. I had my own school of kickboxing, so I wasn't going to let a negative take away my positive. And like I said, that's you got the yin and yang to everything, and this guy was the negative to me being positive. So yeah, good point.
Moving on to round four, I want to move forward a little bit and away from boxing, technically, I suppose, the sport of boxing at least, and that is Hollywood and films and movies. You've had your fair share of roles in movies. There's a list Play It to the Bone, Ocean's 11, Balboa, Creed 1, 2, and 3. And I'm sure there's more out there as well, which we'll get into. When you first got the call to be in a film, what was that like?
Unbelievable. It's just the way life has worked in my journey, right? And being at the right place at the right time, doing the right things. Well, the day that I was leaving RJ Reynolds Tobacco Company after 23 years, I took what they call a buyout because the company was downsizing in people. So if I left the company, they would pay me for a whole complete year and still keep me my benefits. So it was like I was working with them for the year, and I was already in Las Vegas. So I figured I took that opportunity to go forward and concentrate in boxing. And I did that, and that gave me that whole year. Literally, I did everything to improve my career in what I'm doing now, and that was one of those blessings that you had to take advantage of to get to that next level. So, good point.
Do you enjoy the movie roles? I know when we speak before, we've spoken about Creed, and
Yeah.
you try and help them make it as real as possible to in fight action.
Yeah, well, and let me finish the story with how I got that first call. So the day that I'm leaving RJ Reynolds Tobacco Company, I'm working with my manager, and I'm nervous because I get a call early in the morning, right, to do an audition for Play It to the Bone with Woody Harrelson and Antonio Banderas, and I'm nervous, and I've always been disciplined, so I was expecting to work from 8 to 5, as our normal hours were, right? So I'm there with Augie, and I said, Augie, the manager, I said, I got a call to do an audition for a movie. And it was at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And he said, hey, man, I'm just here to sign you out. He signed the paperwork. He got me out, and I went and did the interview and got the job. So that was the thing. But even with Play It to the Bone with Woody Harrelson and Antonio Banderas, you're talking about me helping out Creed 3. I had Woody Harrelson. I was in his corner. And I remember there was one moment where they went through techniques and he wasn't satisfied. And he kind of got mad at himself. And this is at the Mandalay Bay here in Las Vegas, and he's walking outside. And at that point, I yelled out, I said, Woody, if you need some help, let me know. And I thought, that's kind of stupid on my part because this guy's a Hollywood actor star. But he stops and say, yeah, come on, Stitch. So him and I go outside. I said, look, here's what you're doing wrong. And you got to have rotation, and you got to this and that. And yeah, he did it. And at the end of the movie, they had what they call a rap party. And he had a picture, 8x5, 8x10, that he made of him and I. And he signed it, Stitch, you're so cool. Thank you for all your help, your friend, Woody Harrelson. So that was a start. With Balboa, when Rocky fought, I brought in two experienced guys. Livingstone Bramble, that was a world champion boxer, beat Boom Boom Mazzini, and then Don House, that was one of the cutmen that I worked with in the UFC. So I brought in credible people. So yeah, it's been a journey, bro. It's been a fun one.
Do you feel that you've had that positive impact on these movies as well as the sport of boxing?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I feel proud. I brought realistic people in. I know when I did the Creed movie, uh, I was doing a show in New York, and I run into the producer, and he introduces me to the director, and he asked if I knew. I think it was yeah, what was it? The two referees, and I said, yeah, I know him. It was Kenny Bayless and Robert. So I called them, and I got them positions as referees. Uh, Even Drago, when Drago fought in Creed 2, I brought in Paul Querido, he's an official cut man, and he's the one that he looked Russian, so they got him the spot as Drago's cut man. So yeah, I've done that, and even with Creed 3, Michael asked me, who should give away the WBC belt, and I gave him the whole explanation of Jose Suleiman from Mexico City created it. And so on, so on, so on. So yeah, they've there we go. I've helped them all as much as can, and they appreciate it. But I told in the first Creed, I told Ryan Coogler that wrote and directed Creed. He directed Black Panther, big superstar now. But I told him, I said, look, if I see something that's not wrong, I'm gonna bring it up to your attention because uh, I want to make sure that things are done right because you're representing my sport. And he says, Stitch, please do. That's why we brought you in. So,
Are there any similarities in terms of production for, it's a big fight night to these movies?
yeah, about 16 hours different. At and movie, yeah, you're guaranteed to be out there 16 hours. Uh, and then maybe you might have an hour, 2 hours worth of filming. Because everything, once you, when you see these movies, once they go into a different angle, that whole angle takes time for them to set up the cameras, the lighting, the whole everything. So yeah, it's in boxing, of course, you walk in and Woody Harrelson told me one of the lessons I always learned says never look at the camera. So like the big show we did in Sheffield. I know there's cameras 101 different places, but that's not my focus. I'll let them focus in on me instead of me focusing on them.
Fantastic. Let's move on to round five. Correct me if I'm wrong. You got an endorsement deal, I think, with Reebok, and that sort of give you a bit of a credibility, a bit of a boost. Talk to me about that deal. It's quite a big deal at the time.
And people are still talking about it. I think I've been gone from the UFC like 9 years, and but what had happened there is before Reebok, all these fighters and even myself and we would work on sponsorships, because the UFC at that time was basically paying us garbage. They're still paying garbage for the cutmen. I think the ring girls get paid more than the cutmen, which is a shame, right? But we needed the UFC to make our money through sponsors, and fighters were making, I mean, easy 50 to 100,000 a fight on sponsorship because they were getting paid more through sponsors than what the UFC was paying them. Same with me. They would come to me and I would negotiate for myself, and then I would negotiate for the other cutman, of course, a lower pay, but if they got 2 or 3 sponsors on their belt, they got some extra money. So the UFC decided to go and exclusive with Reebok and didn't let nobody know. And they had all these plans already laid out, and everybody's hating it. They're hating Dana, the UFC, Reebok, they're effing them. And they call the cutmen together and they do the same thing is that, you guys can't use any sponsors no more. And being that, I was used to represent the cutmen, I try to negotiate for more money. And the quote was, nah, there's no money in the kitty. So John Nash from Bloody Elbow, never met him, gave me a call and asked if I'd be interested in doing an interview how the Reebok deal affected the cutmen. Well, going back to the days when my parents were, fighting for the rights of farm workers, I thought about them, and the interview went very politically correct, but it went viral. I think maybe because I said I had to concentrate a little bit more on boxing because boxing pays a little bit more. Yeah, but I did like 57 interviews in a week. I had camera crews come to my house when they fired me. And till this day, I get compliments from all over the world and people still associate me with that. But, James, the best compliment, I mean, Wesley Snipes, the wrestler Bill Goldberg, I mean, all these high-end people have given me a lot of accolades. But the best one that I've gotten to this day was during the COVID. We were doing some boxing at the MGM under the COVID guidelines, and one of the top Brazilian coaches for MMA, I hadn't seen him since I left the UFC. He comes up to me and he says, I'll never forget these words. He goes, Steve, we, the coaches, the fighters, we thank you for speaking up because we couldn't. And that kind of, I was always stuck with me. And that was, to me, was the defining moment of that I did everything right.
When you and the UFC parted ways at the time, did you feel any bitterness or anger towards them?
Not at all. No, I the thing that it not didn't irritate me. The thing that I thought was stupid was, I mean, it was this big that 2 weeks later, the UFC has their first big show on Fox Network. Big show, right? And in fact, I had one of my sponsors was a gun store, and I was getting like $5,000 a month just to put a patch here, and I could shoot weapons as much as I wanted. Anyway, Fox says no weapons, no drugs, no alcohol. So they took that away from me, right? But no, when I did that interview, and then about 2 weeks later, they're interviewing Dana during this Fox network show. And the question was, will Stitch Duran ever be back? And that was that big. No, was Stitch and her be back? And if we were friends, he should have called me, and Don House is my friend, all this bullshit. Anyway, at the end, he ends up saying stupid, like, I don't know why he said, he says, Stitch and I were never friends. And there's still memes that are popping up on that statement. Probably had to be the stupidest statement he ever made in his career. No need for it.
Were you friends before the split?
Well, I used to know, I knew Dana in the gym. I knew him before the UFC. So I'll show you there's different points of friendship, right? We were always in the gym. And, he always said he was in boxing, but he used to do hand pats for the executives and the executives' wives. And I don't think he ever really worked the corner, A-level corner. But he was friends with the Fertitas, and the Fertitas are the ones that bought the UFC, and they made him the face of the company. So when we're friends, we're associates in the gym, just like you and I. If you and I were to hook up, have coffee and all that, do we consider ourselves friends? Yeah, associates for sure. So it was that level of that type of work. He never invited me to his house, or anything like that. But nonetheless, every time we saw him, we always said hi to each other.
Let's move on to round six, and we'll stick with the UFC theme, and we're going to stick with a particular person, because you've told me some great stories about this man already, and that is Brock Lesnar, a superstar, especially in America. I'll let you lead. You give us some stories about Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, tons of them, man. It was great because when Brock signed with the UFC, he signed with a condition that I'd be the one that would be wrapping his hands and working his corner, right? So after the weigh-ins on his first fight, him and I went into the dressing rooms at the Mandalay Bay, and my daughter Carla went because she was a big wrestling freak, and I wrapped his hands, right, as an example as a test run, dress rehearsal, as they call it in Hollywood. And once we cut him off, he gave him to my daughter Carla, So that was the start of it, and it worked with him. And I remember when we did the reality shows, the tough shows, I was the cut man for his team. And every time I did these shows, I would always get a tank top from the team to give to my son. So I asked Brock the question, can you give me a tank top, for my son and all that. So I get into the dressing room, I'm wrapping one of the fighter's hands, and Brock comes and drops a bag in front of me. And it's a UFC bag about this big, loaded with all kinds of clothes, and he goes and sits at the other side of the room. And I look at him, I said, Brock, you love me, don't you? He goes, yeah, he did. But more important is, I think, when he fought, I think, Frank Mir for the rematch. He ends up winning, and I walk into the dressing room to congratulate him, and all his team are sitting in the other opposite side of the dressing room, and he's on one side with his wife, and these guys are just kind of waiting for him to respond. So I walk in, hey, Stitch, what's going on? And congratulations, I said, and he gave me a big hug and all that. But one of the things that I'm real proud of is, let me show you. Okay, give me a second. Hold on. All right. So, James, this is what side? This is a UFC glove, right?
Mhm.
Well, this is a Brock Lesnar glove. This sucker is so big. Look at that. What happened is I put on, I wrapped his hands. Well, before that, I'm wrapping his hands, and he has a shirt on, his sponsor shirt. And I said, man, I like your shirt. He says, I pack one for you. I said, huh? He said, well, my wife asked me, should we get a shirt for Stitch? And he said, yeah. So after I wrapped his hands, he went over and got a shirt and gave it to me. That was extremely special. But here I'm putting the gloves on, and we only have two pairs. These are 4X. We only put two, and then this one rips like the Hulk. And I think, oh, gee, what are we going to do? Well, Burt Watson, our coordinator, says, man, you got to figure something out, because I only have one more pair of gloves. But I remember the Klitschkos would put Vaseline on their gauze and then slide the glove in. So that's what I did with Brock, and on the second pair. And this one he signed for me, and it's one of my pride and joys.
Brock is a very visually intimidating figure of a man, but from your stories, he's a very affectionate, special man. Just how nice a guy is Brock?
Yeah, super nice, man. He when he had come back from his surgery, I remember when it was something within the intestinal tracts. I saw him at ringside, and he comes up and he gives me a chest bump. It was more of a love tap, right? But when he fought Cain Velasquez, he ended up with a big old gash down here to the point where the swab went all the way in. And between him and I, he said, "Stitch, take care of me." I said, "Yeah, of course I got you." So yeah, had great moments with him. It's such a good guy to me. I don't know how he was to the other people. Some people consider him arrogant and all that. To me, he was 100% nice.
The time he went and joined the UFC, he was obviously a big superstar in the WWE/WWF, and it was major news when he made a switch to UFC. Did you see a difference in the UFC, whether it be the company, the fan base, etc., when Brock joined?
Yeah, for sure. That a lot of the wrestling fans started looking at the UFC, and he was an instant star right off the bat. That's why I was honored that he requested me to be the guy to wrap his hands and work his cuts. For him to have known me, not knowing that he knew me before he got in, as I look back at that, it's pretty good honor. When somebody recognizes you before you recognize them on your performance, then that's it's not a bad feeling.
He definitely had that crossover appeal. I suppose a bit like Francis Ngannou now going into boxing. When Brock went to UFC, he had that crossover appeal, and it almost started a little bit of a string of the crossover between the wrestling and the UFC. With Ronda Rousey going over to the WWE, etc. Let's move on to round seven. Now, I can't speak to you and not mention the Klitschko brothers.
Yeah.
Again, many stories, but just tell me how you first met the Klitschkos and how you became to work with them.
It was quite ironic. This was December the 12th, 1991, I think, when the Soviet Union first broke. We took a team of professional boxers and kickboxers to Kiev to fight them. I didn't even know what Kiev was. I didn't even know what Ukraine was, right? I knew that they were part of the Russian system. But at that time, the Klitschkos were young, but they were already big stars. And I saw them, but I never met them, right? Until I got back to Vegas years later. They came to Vegas to train, and I told them about the scenario. And then the next day I came back and I showed them the poster that I had from there and who signed it. And that was our first connection. Uh, but when it was time for uh, Vladimir, when he lost his world title to Lehman Brewster, he was with Emmanuel Stewart. And that time, Emmanuel Stewart was commentating for HBO, and there was a fighter here at the MGM. And me and my friend Steve were watching people walk in, and Emmanuel Stewart walks by, and he goes like this. He goes, "I want to talk to you about Vladimir." And the next day he called and says, "Vladimir says he wanted the cut man that was in the movie with Emotions 11." And that's how I ended up working with him and Vitaly for 8 years. So yeah, they're special people in my life. Till this point, I just talked to Vladimir, or he sent me a message a couple of weeks ago because they're in that battle with Russia. But Vladimir, so Zelensky is the president, Vitaly is the mayor of Kiev, and Vladimir is kind of like the face spokesperson for Ukraine. Well, he was in Washington, D.C., and he sent me a message that Stitch, I love you, and this and that, and miss you. And, there's some very powerful moments that we've had together. Let me see if I could track this down. When Michael B. Jordan asked me about who should give away the WBC belt, I mentioned the Suleiman, and so I saw the son, because the father had passed away and the son took over, and I told him the story. He said, "Well, let's take a picture and let's send it to the Klitschkos, because they are both WBC champions." Let me see if I can find this video. I'm gonna let you listen to what Vladimir sent me back, and it just kind of blew my mind. But here's what he said, and show you the relationship. No, maybe not. Shit. Anyway, Here we go.
Specialist stage with whom I spent so much time talking, and he actually saved my career on a lot of different stages. If Stitch wouldn't be in my corner, I would not make the record of 12 years being a champion. So that's so great to see you both. And Stitch is the man.
Yeah, if that don't make you feel good, nothing does. So the last time I saw Vladimir in person was like 3 months later in Germany. I was doing a show there and he was there doing business and he came to the hotel to say hi to me. And very simply, I said, Vladimir, that one moment, why? And that moment was, let me explain to you first, going back when he fought Anthony Joshua, when he lost his world title. I didn't see him and Vitaly till Friday at the weigh-ins. But finally, I tell Vladimir, I put my hand on his shoulder, said, don't worry about nothing. I take care of you like you're my son, and I leave. And I'm putting the final Vaseline on him with 90,000 crazy Brits and at Wembley Stadium and people all over the world. And Michael Buffer's getting ready to do the announcements. And I mean, we're this far apart and I'm doing this. He says, you could call me son, right? And that's where this came from. But yeah, lovely, lovely people. You know, when he retired, they flew the whole team to their training center up in the mountains in Austria. And in doing so, they gave us some very nice bronze statues of both the brothers together. I was the first one to get it because I was with them the longest. So yeah, lovely, lovely people.
How proud are you of that chapter of your career to work with those guys, but also to hear things like that, to give you credit for the longevity of his title reign?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I got quite choked up when I heard it the first time. And because of the relationship, Vitaly, and he's still Vladimir's more of the westernized because, he was working with a lot of American fighters, Emmanuel Stewart, so he had a lot of that westernized blood in him. Vitaly, bro, he was still 100% Russian. But at the end of the fight, when Vladimir lost to Anthony Joshua, we're walking out of the dressing room and Vitaly puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, Stitch, he goes, it's the end of the Klitschko era. He goes, you've been with us for so many years. I love you. You're always welcome to my house. And I got to talk to him about 6 months ago. I did a boxing show in Oklahoma, and there was a Ukrainian fighter there with the interpreter, and the interpreter happened to be the vice president of the Boxing Association in Ukraine. And she said, let's call Vitaly. And she called Vitaly, and I got to speak to him. And once again, I mean, he told me he loved me, and to hear from these guys, it's a big, big honor, man, because it's not like they give that to everybody.
Absolutely. You mentioned Emmanuel Stewart had said to you, Vladimir wants you to work with him, from the Ocean's 11 film. Did you feel that you had built that level of rapport when you was on set for Ocean's 11?
Yeah, it was nice. We only spent 4 days. It was 4 days of filming, which was not much, right? But that association from when I had met them in Kiev. And as a matter of fact, the cornerman jackets that we wore for the movie, I got to keep mine. And they, both Vitaly and Vladimir signed it. That was them. So that was that association, right? And like Vladimir says, there's very few people I trust in my life. You're one of them. So they knew at that point, they're smart enough to know that, I brought credibility to them. And then the karma was very good with them. And yeah, I felt honored just to be part of their group.
You sort of spoke about how special they were as people. How special were they as fighters?
100%, 100% disciplined. Yeah, two different styles. Vitaly was really the pit bull of both of them. Vladimir was more of the scientific type of fighter that Emmanuel Stewart put together. But yeah, they were both brutal in their own ways. And I remember Vladimir is fighting and no, Vitaly was fighting in Germany. And we're in the dressing room and yeah, come on, let's go. Vladimir comes up to me and says, quiet, quiet. In other words, you don't have to do that, And they put me in check, but every time Vladimir would fight, systematically, he would come up to me and have two mouthpieces. This one is the first one, this one's the second one. So the first one I would put on my right pocket, second one in my left pocket because I'm right-handed. And then as he tied his shoes, so he had a system in the dressing room of doing what he did.
Let's move on to round 8, the final round, Stitch. I want to talk about current and future ventures. You've got a few bits and pieces going on. You've got your tape, you've got your CBD, you've got this and that going on now, and building towards the future as well. You sort of venturing into into the business side away from the sport as such. Talk to me about what's going on in your life at the moment and what the future holds for you.
Yeah, it's a crazy route I've been taking, James. Yeah, the CBD products, we're gonna introduce them. We did a lot of proof sources with fighters, and it expedites the healing process. So it has CBD and vegetable stem cell and vitamin E and collagen and aloe vera. And when the company came to me, I asked them first and foremost is what proof source do you have? And they said, well, that's why we called you. So we would use it on fighters. After they fought, they got sewed up, they got bruised up, take a picture of them, give them the cut cream, and then a week later they would respond back with the results, and results have been tremendous. So we're going to be launching that May the 3rd, the weekend that after the weigh-ins when Canelo Alvarez fights Munguia here in Las Vegas. And we'll be doing that at Planet 13, which is the biggest dispensary in the world. It's like a big old mall. I walked in and it blew my mind, So, but in doing that, the people that are going to help it distribute also have cannabis lines. And they contacted me and asked if I'd be interested in having a brand created for me, as they did for Snoop Dogg and Elton John and, other high-end people. And I said, yeah. I said, but look, let me explain to you this. Is the best weed I ever smoked was the year I was stationed in Thailand, Thai stick. And if you could create something as good as that, we'll call it Thai Stitch. So hopefully that'll be coming out in June. And in fact, as we're talking right now, I just got a call from Jeremy, and I just let him know that we'll be doing. I'll be calling him right after this. So that's coming out. But also, first and foremost, is they're filming a documentary on my life. I wrote a couple of books called From the Fields to the Garden, because I grew up as a farm worker, which was the fields, and the garden was Madison Square Garden, and I've been there many times. So we got the footage of me being in New York with Triple G, and then the COVID kicked in. So we waited that time, and then the first guy we interviewed was Tyson Fury. And then, so we're almost done. So my final day of filming will be April the 28th, when I get inducted into the National Boxing Hall of Fame. So not a bad way to end the film. So I've been real blessed.
Absolutely.
And then also in August, I'll be getting inducted into the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame. So, it's nice to receive these kind of accolades.
Are you proud of what you've achieved so far?
100%, 100%, and I'm proud to share it too. Like Jamie Sheldon, I just worked with him over the weekend against him, but I gave him accolades. That it was nice to see his progression, because we first met like 10 years ago in the UFC, and I think he was still a young rookie at that point. Well, now he's working with major fighters, so it's nice to see that growth, and it's nice that I had something to do with at least motivating and teaching some of the people how to do it the right way.
What does the future hold? What is left for you to achieve? Have you got any ambitions or goals that you're targeting still?
I know, and the only ambition of goals that I had was to be a good cut man, and I think I've accomplished that. I was glad, and like I mentioned before, my legacy as I end it, it will be that I made this game a lot safer for the fighters, and yeah, that's the thing. But yeah, it's just it's been a wonderful life, and I don't know what to expect, but things just happen, and I expect some major things to happen this year. Whatever they are, I don't know, but listen, I got myself open for that, and willing to take any challenge, and go that one more round.
Well, you said you wanted to be a good cutman. You've certainly surpassed that, and your legacy cemented it within the sport of MMA and boxing. Stitch, that is the final round done. I want to thank you very much for taking us through the journey of your career and through the 8 rounds that I've thrown at you. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, James. We'll do it again anytime.
Absolutely.
And congratulations on your show. I've seen the growth, and you're doing a tremendous job, man. So, you look at yourself of where you're going to be 5 years from now. And David Diamante, good example, because he started off as a DJ, right? So, as long as you follow your dreams, they do come true.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we'll speak again very, very soon, Stitch.
All right, my man. All the best.
Thank you.